The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green. It's a book that's caught my eye recently, and I wanted to know more about it. And to me, there's one chapter that really stood out, and that is the Bonneville Salt Flats. So, I wanted to read up on it, make some quick searches on Google, see what it's about. So to start off with, let's check out the history. The Bonneville Salt Flats. It's a densely packed salt pan in Tooele County in northwestern Utah, and it's a remnant of Lake Bonneville. It's apparently one of the largest of many salt flats west of the Great Salt Lake. It is also public land that's managed by the Bureau of Land Management. One thing that I know the Bonneville Salt Flats for is for setting land speed records on. It is just miles and miles of just nothing, just flat land that's perfect for going at high speeds. Now here we have a couple articles that we can go through that tell us more on the salt flats, but let's go back and let's check out the main idea. So, the Bonneville Salt Flats main idea. So in it, Green describes his trip to the salt flats and shows how it serves as a way to reflect on his relationship with his wife, and it also gives him this way to reflect on time and its effect that it has on us. So here we have a quote from the chapter itself. It says, "I stood next to her and watched a drone flying over the salt flats. Our gazes entwined. I felt calmer. I was thinking about the people I used to be and how they fought and scrapped and survived for moments like this one. Looking with Sarah, the salt flats seemed to change. They no longer had the menace of indifference about them." That, I feel, is a good way to show what the main idea of this chapter is. So, as we go back, we can see the past of the chapter. So we have for the purpose. I believe that the purpose of this chapter is to tell about the experiences Green had when visiting Wendover, the nearby city to the Bonneville Salt Flats, as well as detailing the experiences he had there. And he wanted to connect the flats to the Anthropocene and the theory that everything there is on Earth has its own purpose. The audience is, he does mention the people that believe in the theory that everything on Earth is here to benefit us. So I believe that's sort of his target audience. He used the salt flats as a connection to see how it can affect us. And the speaker, it's obviously from Green's perspective, and he's very descriptive with his words when he describes the flats to make us really seem like we're there. We're experiencing what he's experiencing. We get to feel the sand under our feet, really see the openness of this landscape. And the situation, the situation of this chapter involves Green traveling out to Bonneville and telling his experiences. So, let's move on. Let's make some more searches. Let's search up the breakdown of the sections of the chapter. So, if we continue. So the chapter has been broken down into 3 sections. Paragraphs 1 through 6, 7 through 12, and 13 through 18. So, in this chapter, Green talks about his experiences in Wendover and what happened to him while there, and how it helped him realize the beauty and serenity one can find when spending time with someone and simply gazing on a marvelous landscape. So, the first section, 1 through 6. These paragraphs he spends talking about his relationship with his wife, as well as he uses it to set up a point that he makes later in the chapter. So let's start off with that. So here we have a couple quotes from this section, and as we can see highlighted in yellow, he includes this quote by Donald Hall, the husband of the poet Jane Kenyon. And I believe that the quote serves as a way for Green to develop this point about the strange serenity of the flats and how it helps him build a closer relationship with him and his wife. And in green, you can see green speaks on what is called third things, which is something that Donald Hall had mentioned. And then green also uses it to give examples of like things that bring him and his family close. And another quote that I felt was important in this section was, "I felt for the first time one of my favorite feelings in this world, the feeling of Sarah's gaze and mine, meeting and entwining as we looked at a third thing." Now, this quote shows like the impact of the gaze, in quotation mark, and how it's really like made its mark on the relationship and how it's developed it further. So, let's go back. The next section we'll talk about is paragraphs 7 through 12. These chapters, Green talks about him having gone to a casino, and he talks about the people he meets there. So, here on the right again, you can see some more quotes. There's a certain way I talk about things, the things I don't like. Maybe that's true for all of us. We have ways of closing off the conversation so that we don't ever get directly asked what we can't bear to answer. Now, I believe this is important because this is after a conversation he has with the dealer at the casino. And he says something that makes him realize that people do have these like creative ways that they can fall back on in order to get out of a relation, to get out of a conversation that doesn't really touch on topics that they want to touch on. And in green, we have, "I thought about that old Faulkner line, that the past isn't there. It's not even past." Now, this quote by William Faulkner, it's a quote from something that he wrote called Requiem for a Nun. And the big meaning behind it is that the past, it's never truly dead. It always comes back. It shapes us into who we are now. And it follows us throughout our lives, no matter what we do to try to bury it. And Green is able to connect it by later saying that, but you are also all the selves you used to be, the ones you grew out of but can't ever quite get rid of, which further enforces the point that the past shapes you. You can never really escape it. It is a part of you, who you are. So now let's move on to the next section, paragraphs 13 through 18. Now Green uses these paragraphs to talk about the salt flats and what he realizes about himself while there. He's also able to describe the flats using figurative language so that he makes us feel as if we're really there. Here in Green uses figurative language to describe how being in the heart of an old salty lake feels. The similes gives us a connection so that we can feel like we're there and we can relate to the emotions he's experiencing. And he does so to set up the point of the Anthropocene and how this flat benefits us. Using figurative language, he's also able to, he's able to really describe these salt flats and to give it like this threatening kind of vibe to it. Like how it's just vast expanses of white nothingness for miles and miles with nowhere to go really. So we can see highlighted in yellow, it's a callback to the beginning of the chapter when Green gives a quote by Donald Hall, in which said quote describes that feeling of love when gazes entwine onto a third thing, as the moment is shared and felt by both parties. Now, Green has spent the entirety of this section just talking about how desolate and terrifying the flats are to him. And he even said how like the water could come back from the salt flats and just swallow him and the whole city up. And he just goes on and on about how empty this whole place is. But once he's reunited with his wife and they watch this drone fly up over the desert as it catches a nice view of the landscape. Their gazes entwine onto this drone, and for once, while he's standing out in the middle of this desert, he feels peace. The menace just fizzles out, and all there is left is just a nice, calm, relaxing feeling of him spending the moment with his wife. So, if we go back, there's one more thing in which I have to check out, which is Green's review, and after that, I'm going to give my review of the chapter, what I believed about it. So Green gives the review of the Salt Flats a 3.5 out of, I'm guessing, is a 5-star criteria. And I believe he gives this because the flats, I don't think he believes it's for him, because he mentions early in the chapter how it's a good place to go when you're into, say, like fast cars going in and out and about. But it's not very good for kids, because what else is there to do besides just go out for a drive? So now let's get on to my review of the chapter. I'm going to give Green a 4 stars out of 5 for this, because I do believe that the chapter is good at giving an explanation of the Salt Flats, as he spends the entirety of the first section just kind of explaining a little bit of the backstory behind it. And he also uses it to set up and explain some points that he makes. For example, the point with Donald Hall, and how we need this third thing in relationships to really bring us together. So yeah, that's my final thoughts on the chapter. I believe it's very interesting, the Salt Flats, how it came to be, what it's being used for now. So with that, I'll leave you guys with a video of someone setting a land record on the Bonneville Salt Flats. Thank you.